Welcome back to Royish Good Looks 2. My name is Roy, and I've got a very special edition video for you today. We're going to be remixing a song I recorded over 10 years ago, back in 2012, before there was even a Royish Good Looks. I was around, but Royish Good Looks wasn't around. So we're going to jump into the time machine, open up an old Pro Tools session, we'll poke around a little bit, then I'm going to remix the song, and I'm going to put it up on my Patreon page, patreon.com/RoyishGoodLooks. If you didn't already know, every month I post music to my Patreon, demos, alternate versions of songs, covers, and not only that, but I don't really post on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter all that much. So if you want to hear more from me, or just in general support what I'm doing, Patreon is a really great way to do that. And another thing you may not know is Patreon has a really awesome mobile app. I even find myself listening to songs through the Patreon app because it's actually easier to get into this than my Dropbox. So for example, back in September, I released a cover of Working for the Weekend. Everybody's working for the weekend. Thank you to everyone who supports what I do on Patreon. Thank you for watching today. And now let's jump into the time machine and make some music. So this is the Pro Tools session for the song that we're going to work on today. I found this while looking through some old backups. I have a ton of hard drives with recording sessions scattered all through my studio and my home, so I kind of knew that somewhere this session existed with a bunch of other songs from this same era, but I kind of accidentally rediscovered it, and when I did, I was like, this is awesome. So this is from 2012, 12 years ago, almost exactly down to the day. When I first opened this up, it really did feel like opening a time capsule of, this is not at all what my recording sessions look like nowadays. If you watch the behind the scenes with Royish Good Looks studio diary, you'll know I have a very strict way that I set up my recording sessions, the way certain tracks are colored, the way I kind of organize the timeline, the way I think about the whole process. And so if you're familiar with that, you can probably look at this and say, that doesn't look like Royish Good Looks. And that's because you're absolutely right. Royish Good Looks was not even a YouTube channel in 2012. So we got to kind of pause for a minute and let me explain what was even going on in the year 2012 in the Roy universe. If you've listened to my podcast, I've definitely talked about this on and off on occasion. There's an episode where I talk about how I got into recording. In this era, early 2012 to mid 2012, it was my last semester in college, and I was doing an internship with a recording studio, and I was sort of switching from using Logic Pro to using Pro Tools. The studio I was interning with used Pro Tools, and of course I learned a little bit of Pro Tools in college, but I was sort of a Logic guy. You know, recording software is a lot like learning a language. You get really good, in your native language. And then when you try to speak another language, you're slower and clunkier and things don't quite make as much sense and you don't know exactly how to say what you want to say. So I always felt kind of slow in Pro Tools, but through my internship, I was picking up a lot of tips and tricks, way more than I had learned in college. Whenever I wasn't interning at the studio, I was taking what I'd learned and putting it into my own productions at home. I was doing that not with my own music, but with covers. If you want to learn how to make great music, it's a lot easier if you just make a cover of someone else's song. Like, don't worry about writing a song and recording it. Use somebody else's song that's already awesome and just make your own version of it. That was kind of the mindset I took of how can I learn how to make better recordings? Because that's sort of what I was studying to do. I wasn't really studying to become a musician, which is kind of funny that you probably know me as a person that makes music on the internet. I am a musician, but that's not at all how I was looking at my career in 2012. I was really studying to become a recording engineer or a producer or something along those lines. I was going to help other people make their music. So covers were my way to practice this. So the song I've covered here is by the band The Starting Line. The song is called Three's a Charm from their 2001 EP With Hopes of Starting Over. The Starting Line is one of my favorite bands, maybe in my top 10 all time. The early 2000s was, of course, like my favorite era of pop punk, and this song Three's a Charm is one of my absolute favorites. So I made a cover of it. Now let's tour the Pro Tools session a little bit. Right off the bat, the color scheme is the thing that stands out the most to me. Some of the tracks are colored, some are not. The clips are the default kind of Pro Tools. Every other track alternates the colors. Now I always color the track and the clips exactly the same. At the very top of the session, we've got the click track, and I still do that today. Master track, which I normally keep at the bottom of my sessions now. And then vocals. Guitars, colored the tracks obviously, but not the clips. Obviously everything like unconsolidated. The edits are just still there. Then we've got two tracks for bass, maybe some kind of like reverse cymbal here. Yeah. Then there's 2 instrument tracks here with some MIDI. So I'm not sure what this bottom one was. Might be like a different snare drum or something. And then this very final track is one that I imported today, which is just the final mix down of the song. Because as you'll see here, we can't actually play the song we can't really play the song at all because I'm missing a couple of the plugins. When Pro Tools opened up today, it said, hey, you're missing these plugins. So number 1, I'm missing Contact 4 and 5. I think I'm on Contact version 7 on this computer. So we can't play the drums, but we do have the drum MIDI. The guitars look good. The master track here, I don't know what I was thinking here. CLA 3A. We've got an EQ. Whoa, look at this. This is way too much EQ for the master track. That's insane. 11 dB at 22 kilohertz. What was I thinking there? And then Ozone for some mastering, I assume. That was one really game-changing important thing I was learning at the time, was not just recording and mixing your song, but mastering it and bringing it up to the right level and making it competitive and, just sound really big and bombastic. That always seemed kind of like, a black art to me. And in watching engineers work at the studio, that's really how it felt. It was like they'd bring the track up to level and I'd be like, that's incredible. You're making it sound good. But every time I do that, it doesn't sound that good. There was always like a missing link. So I was obviously experimenting with how to master my own recordings here. And then the only other thing missing is our good old pal Autotune. Autotune Evo, although there's a Melodyne, which is interesting. Must have been experimenting with using Melodyne. I think I had started experimenting using Melodyne in the iTunes Steve Jobs remixes. Yeah, I'd already been using Melodyne a little bit, but probably over like the last year or two. I wasn't really familiar with Melodyne, and Autotune was sort of my strength. I was a lot better in that. It's kind of the same thing of like being good in Logic and Pro Tools. I was really good in Autotune, graph mode, not as great in Melodyne. So again, some more experimentation here. So if we just play the session back, so there's no drums, right? So that's one thing I'm gonna have to fix in the, remixing of this. There's one other thing that kind of bugs me about this session is the markers here. We've got start, reverse cymbal, location 7, bridge, lead, open, strum, some use of markers, but it's not marking every section of the song, which that's so crucial for like copy pasting, for automation, for just getting a bird's eye view of what's going on. And my number 1 favorite Pro Tools preference, always display color markers. Check this out. Ta-da! And then you can get a better idea for the spanning of time between things. So I'm very particular about my organization. It doesn't make the mix sound any better, but I do think it makes the mixing a lot easier. That visual side of things just really speeds up the process. I don't have to think about things, right? One other interesting thing, I guess, is these guitars are not DI guitars like I normally use. I plug the guitar direct into my recording interface and then use an amp simulator. These guitars, I think, were the Line 6 Pod. So recording the pod into Pro Tools rather than a DI with an amp simulator or even a microphone on a guitar cabinet. Now these look like they got a little EQ here. Maybe not such wild EQ here, but... And then I guess finally, if we do look at the vocals, you can see I've done a couple of takes and chopped things together here. There obviously are a couple of playlists. So, this is before the era of doing like a dozen or more takes, as you've probably seen through the Mandalorian behind the scenes. But it looks like I've kind of done this maybe part by part. Looks like there might have been one kind of full take through the song, take 1 here, and maybe as like a warm-up take. And then, a handful of extra takes per each section, so I could still comp together, a really good overall performance. And then it looks like there's 2 harmony tracks and 2 kind of background vocals in the bridge. So we can't play the song as the multi-track in Pro Tools right now, but I do have the mixed down version of the song, which I will share on Patreon as well as the new mix that we make today. But let's take a listen to a little bit of what we have now before we dive into our new mix. love this part here. Okay, so you can see by my face here, having a lot of fun going down memory lane here. I've always thought of recordings as like, you know, a musical photo album where you can look back and it's like, it's a moment in time. And this is bringing me back exactly where I was in 2012. So, you know, one of the biggest things I notice in this is how my voice has changed. Surely you're probably hearing that as well. Anything you've heard from me has been from late 2015 and on. So, I mean, this is kind of close. This is early 2012. So 3 or 4 years later, you know, is when I started releasing Royish Good Looks music. There's a little bit of that like Fall Out Boy, Patrick Stump thing of like drawing out the vowels so you sound a little cooler rather than actually pronouncing the word properly, which I've tried so hard to get away from. I just want to sound like me and not like put on a voice, but you can really hear on some of these lines here the difference in how I might design the vowel of a word. Love! That's definitely the style. Any band from this 2012 era, I was probably still emulating them a lot rather than trying to be like my own artist. Like, again, this wasn't a song that, you know, I wrote that I was going to release. I probably cared more about just simply recording, editing, and mixing this song than like, how am I going to sound as Roy, the musician here? These vowel sounds are just so interesting here. And then that other line, I'm still recovering. Still, you know, it's just trying to make it sound cool, trying to hit the note, not worrying about, you know, sounding true to yourself, which again is something I really try to do today. All right, total side note, now that we're talking about singing and now that I've been talking a little bit and I can actually feel my voice fatiguing a little bit, the reason you haven't seen a new Royish Good Look song in the last month or two, I'm just now recovering from a huge cold that I had from late November to like mid-December, and I completely lost my voice. But I even feel like I'm losing my voice right now because I'm talking too much. But I couldn't talk, I couldn't sing, and it's been slowly coming back. Just yesterday, I was in the studio rehearsing some songs, and I've been singing like a few keys lower than I normally would, and I'm just now starting to feel like, hey, I can sing again. And I do have a really awesome song on the back burner now that's just waiting to have vocals recorded. Again, if you're a member of the Patreon, you're already clued into this behind the scenes here. I'm hoping in the next few weeks, I'm going to feel 100% with my vocals, or at least confident enough that I can record some new vocal tracks, which is going to lead to many more new songs and many more bonus tracks. So just a little aside here, if you've been wondering, there are new songs in the works. I've just been taking care of my health in the meantime, so stay tuned. So we've got a look at the Pro Tools session. We heard the original mix. Now I'm going to reorganize everything, pull in my usual mixing template, and see how we're shaping up there. I'm going to guess we're going to need to do a little bit of like editing and kind of retweaking of things, but I'm going to get the session set up and then we'll continue. Okay, so I've just taken a couple minutes here to reorganize some things, and already it's like, now I get it. You know, I've got all of the sections of the song marked out here: the verse, the chorus, the bridge, drums, you know, bass, blue, B, blue, it's gotta be blue, guitars, G, green, right? My main vocal's always orange, harmonies are always yellow, backgrounds are always this kind of brown color, reverbs are usually purple, my reference tracks are always this kind of moody blue here. Now I can mix the song. Even so, there's still some funny things here of like harm and then harm R. Like we didn't label this harm L. Really funny nomenclature. Some kind of send here that's in pre-fader mode. Not like, I was just a beginner in Pro Tools when I made this recording. And even though I had been recording probably for 10 years at this point in some capacity, like on a tape recorder, in GarageBand, Samplitude, FL Studio, or Fruity Loops as it was called back then. So I wasn't like totally brand new to recording, but I clearly didn't have my workflow completely locked down yet. It was like, oh, I'm just experimenting. I'm just doing whatever. So it's really interesting to see that like over the course of another 10 years or 12 years, how honed in and particular you can be of like, it has to be this way. So I don't need to worry about like where a certain track is or what it's called or where we are in the song, eliminating like really small things by just organizing the session. So no remixing yet, but now the session looks like a regular song to me. All right, check it out. we have got our overly complicated Royish Good Looks session. How many darn tracks do we got here? We got 96 tracks total. So now we're in the ballpark of something to play with here. You know, there's my favorite quote from Sound City. Tom Petty is talking about the switch of like having a big recording console to a studio that's only got like one fader. And he's like, there's nothing for me to play with here. I want some shit to play with. So we have clearly got some to play with here. That's what I love. So we've done a ton of mix importing here. I brought in all the stuff for my usual template. I haven't re-edited anything except moving around some of the MIDI clips here so that it could go to the right instrument tracks. But I do want to do some re-editing of like the guitars and the vocals. You can kind of hear on a lot of the guitar edits that they're really abrupt. It's kind of robotic and like overly edited. So I do want to go back through and clean some of that up when I have more time. And same thing with the vocals. I haven't gone through and cleaned up like all the, dead space and noise. And the vocals have all those extra takes. So I'm going to go back through and try to recomp some vocals and maybe even make some vocal doubles so that this can sound even more awesome. There's a lot of stuff to play with here. Even just importing the template as is, there's still like so much more we could do if I was going to produce it up like a normal Royish Good Looks song. I've also muted some guitar tracks here just because the arrangement is like really crazy. It's kind of funny, like I've created a whole can of worms here with this video. I came in here thinking like, this will be a really short thing. I'll just talk about like, I found the file and I want to remix it and ta-da, here we are 2.5, 3 hours later. So all that said, we've imported a bunch of settings and I've kind of tweaked everything to sound decent for today's example, and I'll go ham for the Patreon release. So by the time you're watching this, the full Royish Good Looks treatment is up on the Patreon. So I'll start by playing the 2012 mix, and then we'll flip over to our new 2024 mix. There you have it, some comparing back and forth. I think you can tell by my facial expressions when that new mix kicks in, it's like a blanket, like the beanie comes off of your ears. You can hear the mix open up a little bit. And of course, like I said, I've done a lot of work, but not as much detail work. Like if you saw The Mandalorian behind the scenes, I put like 40 hours of editing and mixing into that. And this is just, a very, very small fraction of that. I'm really curious to hear it against the original version. If we want, we can compare. All right, here's Starting Line's version.
Forget me, girl. I'm still recovering from her.
My version.
Forget me, girl. I'm still recovering from her. It hurts so. I'm sorry, girl. I'm ashamed to love. It's not you. It's her.
I love that I have these old recordings around that I can listen to and enjoy and share with you. But to also be able to like do the George Lucas special edition thing, there's just something really fun about that. It's like, I guess it's just kind of rewarding to be able to pick up an old project and make it even better. That's kind of my entire ethos, is I just want to come into the studio every next day and do a little bit better than the last. So this was an awesome exercise in that. As you can see, this was a lot of fun for me today. I hope you enjoyed the ride too. Again, if you want to download these songs, go to the Patreon link in the description, check out the other bonus tracks, check out the blogs. I'd love to have you a part of our community there. Thank you for watching today, and I'll see you on the next one.